Welcome back to another explainer. Today we're diving into a genuinely fascinating historical account from 1 Samuel chapter 5, and it perfectly captures this wild paradox of human desire. In fact, the title of our explainer today is The Glory of God Revealed in the Place of Loss. And I know that sounds incredibly counterintuitive, but stick with me. So just think for a second about the stark contrast between our actual needs and our endless wants, right? If you give a starving person a warm meal, they receive it as this absolute grace. It just generates pure, deep gratitude. But getting what we merely want, like a shiny new car or a bunch of public recognition, well, that usually works entirely differently. That initial thrill fades super fast and it leaves behind this louder obsession for more, more, more. So getting what we truly need fills us with grace, but endlessly chasing what we want without God, it just leaves us obsessed and feeling even emptier. It's literally like drinking seawater to quench your thirst. It just doesn't work. To really unpack this today, we're going to follow a pretty clear roadmap. We'll look at the idea of glory and loss, then the fall of idols, how we tend to just move our problems around, and finally, what true restored worship actually looks like. So let's just dive right in. Starting off with when God is misused, we're dropping right into a shockingly huge defeat. The Israelites were facing off against the Philistines in battle, and instead of genuinely seeking God, they essentially turned the Ark of the Covenant into a giant lucky charm. They literally dragged it out to the battlefield, basically assuming God could be used as some sort of magic formula for their own success. And the result, just a totally devastating loss. And even worse, the capture of the Ark itself. This completely flipped a reality upside down. The battle actually took place at a location called Ebenezer, which literally translates to stone of help. But because they treated God as just a tool to guarantee a win, what the text essentially calls a superstitious faith, the supposed place of help instantly became a scene of utter humiliating defeat. It's a harsh reminder, right? God absolutely cannot be manipulated or just waved around like a magic wand for our own ambitions. Now, to really get this, we kind of have to step into the Philistine perspective for a minute. In the ancient mindset, a military victory meant your gods were literally stronger than the enemy's gods. So by capturing the ark and parking it right in the temple of their agricultural god, Dagon, they were making a massive physical declaration. They were saying, Dagon has defeated the Lord. They treated the ark like a captured spoil of war, just absorbing it directly into their own religious system. Back home for the Israelites, it looked like the whole shebang was over. They were crying out, Ichabod, which means the glory has departed. But here's the really powerful truth jumping out of the source text. God's glory absolutely does not depend on human protection. No way. Even when his people fail miserably, God is the king who reveals his own glory all by himself. So in the exact spot where Israel failed to protect his honor, God was gearing up to handle things on his own. Which brings us to our second point, the illusion of defeat. Let's take a peek at what actually happens behind the closed doors of a pagan temple overnight. Seriously, it's this incredible sequence of events that proves exactly who is running the show. Okay, picture this. The morning after the ark arrives, the Philistines stroll in only to find Dagon fallen flat on his face right in front of the ark. And what do? They frantically prop their supposedly all-powerful god back up with their own two hands. I mean, imagine having to literally glue your deity back into place. But by the second morning, it's not just a fall. God has completely dismantled the idol, totally without human intervention. Dagon is on the floor again, but this time his head and his hands are snapped right off, just lying there on the threshold. So why does that specifically matter? Well, in the ancient Near East, chopping off the head and hands was super symbolic. The head represents authority, and the hands represent power. By snapping them both off, the message was unmistakable. Absolute zero authority and zero power. Dagon was literally nothing in the presence of the true God. So it turns out the captive wasn't the ark at all. The real captive was the idol. And man, doesn't this bring the text right into our modern lives? I really want you to ask yourself, what is the Dagon you are setting back up? Think about it for a second. An idol is something you genuinely think will hold you up, but in reality, you're the one who constantly has to keep holding it up. So even when life brutally shows you that money or human approval or career success just cannot save you when things get tough, what broken idols are you still trying to frantically prop back up with your own hands every single morning? This reveals the absolute core of the message here. When our false salvations are broken, it is not some cruel punishment. Actually, it is a beautifully dismantling work of grace.
God is intentionally detaching us from the very things that are slowly killing us. He breaks the fake salvation we cling to, simply so we can see that true, lasting security is found only in Him.
So moving on to our third part, evading the divine. The idol is shattered, the people are completely terrified. So what do they do next? Well, instead of bowing down in reverence, the Philistines chose relocation over repentance. Yeah, they decided to just move the ark away from Ashdod, shipping it off to Gath and then over to Ekron. But here's the catch. The heavy hand of the Lord, the sheer reality of their unrepentant state, it just followed them everywhere they went. And honestly, we do the exact same thing today. When we're faced with these deep internal conflicts, or when our own personal idols get challenged, we usually just try to change our environment instead of actually confronting our own hearts. We think to ourselves, if I just change my job, or if I just find a new relationship, or maybe switch churches, or move to a new city, then everything will be fine. We just try to pack up and move the problem. But here is the absolute truth of it. Relocation without repentance merely changes the address of your problem. If you carry an unchanged, stubborn heart to a brand new city or a brand new relationship, those exact same anxieties, those fears, that desperate need for validation, they are simply going to follow you like oversized luggage. The outside might look like Gath or Ekron now, but trust me, your inside is still Ashdod. Which leads us to our final section, true worship restored. Because if propping up our broken idols doesn't work and geographically relocating our problems doesn't work, then what does true restoration actually require from us? We really have to stop and ask ourselves a hard question. Am I actually repenting before God, or am I merely relocating my problem? We've got to stop running from Ashdod to Gath to Ekron. True restoration only begins the second we stop shifting the blame to our circumstances and finally bring the core issue, which is our own stubborn refusal to submit, directly before God. So when we look back at this whole journey today, a really clear pattern emerges. God's presence is misused by His people. He acts totally alone to humble these false idols. And human nature, being what it is, tries to just casually move the problem away. But ultimately, God is calling us to stop moving, let those heavy idols fall, and just bow. He does not fail just because we fail. And that brings us to this incredibly powerful realization: my failure is not God's end. It's just not. And the absolute ultimate proof of this is the cross of Jesus Christ. Think about it. The place that looked to the entire world like the ultimate defeat, the ultimate loss, the final capture, that was actually the exact place where God revealed His greatest glory and secured ultimate victory. So I want to leave you with this today. Will you stop the hand that is frantically trying to set broken idols back up and instead just humble yourself under the strong hand of God? Will you finally stop running from your real problems and let true worship begin in the very place you thought you had lost everything? Think on that. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll see you on the next one.